Hello, everyone. Welcome along to a new interview today. I'm pleased and delighted to be joined, I should say, by Will Humphrey. How are you, mate?
I'm very well. How are you, Luca?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. So I think a good starting point to kick this interview off. We'll go back to a couple of years, sort of 2021. You were based with Simon and Ed Crisford. I remember watching you win on My Seven at Lingfield. And was the plan always to sort of move to America initially? We've seen how the absolute state and mess British racing's in at the moment. It's in dire straits, to be honest. Not just prize money, but jockeys struggling to make ends meet as well. Tyler and Grace McEntee, two examples. You've gone to America as well. But for you personally, was that always in the back of your mind to move on away from British racing and try and explore pastures new?
Not particularly. I was always a huge fan of American racing. I watching the Breeders' Cup and Santa Anita, I just thought there was something magical about it. But when you're sitting in England, aged 18, the thought of moving to the other side of the world and doing that, it was something that I always sort of dreamed about, but never in any way contemplated that it would actually come to reality. It just sort of fell into place, to be honest with you, and I don't regret one bit of it.
Just sticking with Simon and Ed Crisford, sorry. From a development point of view, how good were they to you during your stay with them?
It was a good grounding. It was the first flat yard I'd worked in. I sat on some lovely horses, got to know, learned a lot about pace, rode with some great jocks in the morning, William Buick, Sylvester Sousa regularly, which was a great experience. But to be honest with you, I didn't find that it did anything for my race riding career. It was no fault of Simon or Ed's. They had big owners with retained riders, and I think in my 15 months there, I maybe only rode 5 or 6 horses for them. And outside of that, I found it really tough to get any rides. I think what I learned in the stable, work ethic, and like I say, pace and what have you, and just learning about the breeding, different pedigrees and stuff, it definitely did me good.
So sticking with, obviously you mentioned about the lack of rides, it's not uncommon for apprentices in this country to struggle. Apart from 3 or 4 the media latch onto, the rest sort of get unnoticed. And it's quite a hard graft to make you out the ladder as an apprentice in this country. Once you moved to America, did you find that straight away the opportunities were just much more common and much more frequent compared to being over here?
Yeah, well, I to be honest with you, I got to the stage in England where I was just completely sick to death there. I mean, I was completely done with racing, full stop. I was driving to Wolverhampton to ride at 9 o'clock at night on a 300 to 1 shot, getting back the next morning, up again at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was just burnt out. I was losing money doing it. And so I had actually decided that was me done. I wasn't going to race ride anymore. And my family is friends of Graham Motions. And so I decided I was just going to take a break, take 3 months out, and I came to Tampa in Florida, and I was just galloping horses, just exercising in the morning, and I loved it, and it just completely rekindled my love for the game. And unexpectedly, Graham then threw me on a few horses in the afternoon, and it was just like a different world, and suddenly I completely fell in love with the game again, and I decided to stay here in America, which was a big decision, at the age of 19 to move to the other side of the world. Came up here to Maryland, Fair Hill, where Graham's based, and I'm now based at Laurel, and it is 100% a different world. They love, trainers here love taking weight off a horse, which was great because if you show up in the morning and you work, and they will reward you for that. And so, my first year here with my £7 claim, which then went down to a £5 claim, and that's the lowest that you get here. It's 7 and then 5. And in my first year here, I mean, in England, I rode for 15, 16 months, and I rode 70 horses. And my first year here, I rode 500 races. And it was just a different world. And, through that, you can only improve, you can only get better. And yeah, it's just night and day, to be honest with you, in terms of how trainers and people want to support young riders coming through.
And sticking with Graham, I do believe he actually had main sequence, who was runner-up in the Derby, I think 10 years ago in America.
Yeah.
But what's he like on a day-to-day basis to work for?
Absolute gentleman. Honestly, as a horse person and a trainer, he is, he's not actually in the American Hall of Fame at the moment, but he's been nominated a couple of times and he will be. But I mean, he's just so good with people, with the horses. And it was bizarre when I first came here, because Graham Motion, this worldwide name, and then within a week or so I'm having breakfast with him, and he took me to the shop to get try and find a car and stuff, and he almost like Hall of Fame trainer, and he almost acts like your father at the same time. He's just a fantastic man, absolutely fantastic.
And sticking with the tracks, we mentioned about Laurel Park. You've also rode winners at Pimlico, a Triple Crown track in the US calendar as well. What's the difference do you find particularly between domestic tracks over here and away from the obvious of the tight turns and the bends are obviously the obvious, but away from that, what would you sort of notice differently compared to tracks over here?
The way races are run are different. On the dirt, it's all about getting out the gate and getting position early, and they go hard and fast early. In general, everywhere across America, races are run at a much faster pace than in Britain, purely because you haven't got the up and down, you haven't got the hills and what have you. But the dirt took me a bit of time to get used to, actually, and it's amazing how much, to look at it on the television, I guess it's a little bit like the poly track, where the racing back home, but it's amazing how different lines on the dirt make such a difference. The rail can be very, very deep, whereas the middle is sometimes a little bit quicker, and it can change quite a lot. So you've got to know the track quite well, and same on the turf as well. But each track, although they're I guess to the uneducated person as regards American racing, they would see a two-turn oval, but Charlestown, for example, it's 5.5 furlongs round. You go to Belmont and you're looking at a 1.5 mile circuit, and so each track is unique for sure.
And moving on to the stewarding, we've spoken in person a message about the stewarding. Domestically here, it's largely inconsistent. It's quite frankly a mess, really. You've got to look at Royal Ascot, that's just gone for an example last year in the Norfolk. I was there as well, and I was surprised that result stood. But in terms of stewarding in America, is it quite strict? Is it more lenient compared to over here? Are they quite tight with their rules?
Yeah, they're tighter. You have to stay straight here, and the biggest difference is that it doesn't matter if you were riding a horse that was 10 lengths the best horse in the race. If you turn, say take an example, if you're turning into the home straight and you bump another horse and impede that horse or cause it in any way interference, and you then draw off to win by 10 lengths on the bridle, chances are you're still going to get taken down. So you have to stay straight. In terms of the whip rules, we have 6 strikes here, and when you go over that, they've just changed them, actually. So I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not exactly 100% sure on the penalties, but there is a totting up system for points, and when you reach a certain amount of points, you get a suspension and a fine, and even 1 strike over the 6, you you get a fine and I think 1 day suspension. And yeah, and purses are taken away, and the fines are significant as well. I mean, if you I think if you get a 10-day suspension, you know, you're looking at a couple of $1,000 fines. So yeah, they're tight here. And the other thing that I think is always very good is that when there is interference, the following day, the jockeys that have been involved in that interference or were, you know, in some way involved in that race, and all of the apprentice riders at the track, the following day before races, you go in with the stewards, you sit down, and you just watch the race, and you just, you know, you discuss it, what happened. And it's a good chance for the apprentices to learn, and also, you know, you just learn from your mistakes. And even since I came here, I started racing at Laurel in April, and I would say that the quality of riding and the amount of interference have dramatically decreased, even in you know, the last 10 months or so. And I think that a huge factor of that is the we call them films, that we have each day.
Do you feel that the American rules in terms of stewarding have actually developed you better as a rider, knowing that no matter how far you could possibly win a race, if you bump a horse along the way, you can end up getting suspended? Whereas over here, you can knock a horse sideways, and if that horse doesn't stay on towards the line and regain that momentum, the race will not change placings really. But do you find that your riding on the whole has developed better being based in America with their rules compared to what it would have been if you were still over here?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely, along with other factors, it's sharpened me up personally. You know, you have to be very aware of where other riders are, you know, always, and just being alert. But also, it's taught me in terms of riding, you know, quite often you see, especially in Britain, you know, you often see jockeys in the finish riding with a long loop in their reins. And when I first came over here, that was sort of the style that I had. And whereas you watch the American jockeys, and all the way that the contact they have with the horse's mouth is quite tight, and getting a horse to quicken whilst maintaining that, you know, very, very precise control of the horse is something which has definitely brought me on. It's changed my riding a lot.
Also, do you feel track work in America is obviously they're very aware of the clock in America, much long before we became obsessed with sectionals in this country? Do you feel that being on the clock and track work benefits horses more compared to just going for a routine canter, say up the heath in Newmarket? Or do you think track work actually benefits horses better than just the routine canter work we tend to have here?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, you know, often we often ride with radios here, and earpieces, and I think that from a training perspective, and not every trainer does do it, but Graham is someone who does do it, and I think that gives the trainer an awful lot more control of what's going on. Often when I was riding out in England, I'd be told to go and do a swing and canter or a half pace, and my swing and canter or a half pace might be very much different to yours. But if for example the trainer is telling, you know, says 2-minute lick the horse, which basically means, you know, do a mile in 2 minutes, so you want to be doing 15-second furlongs for eight furlongs, and then, you know, you know the pace that you're going. And I guess from a training perspective, it just helps the trainers not leave the race behind, because if they said to me, go out there and do a swing and canter for a mile, and I might basically be going flat out, but completely leave my race behind. So I think it does definitely help.
And just finally for you at the moment, of course, you're in top 5 jockey standings at the moment within Laurel Park. I think it's 9 winners so far this year. It's been a really good start for you. Every time I go on the social media, I see you riding a winner. So what is the aim going forward now, between now and say the end of the year? Is it just a simple case of trying to build more contacts, trying to get more winners, and hopefully just trying to find your feet in what is what's proved to be a very fruitful move for you so far?
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect this year, to be honest with you. I came here last year, and when I started in April, I didn't know whether I was going to ride 3 winners, 5 winners, 100 winners, and I think I rode 50 odd winners last year, and I thought that was brilliant. But right at the end of the year, I lost my claim, and and it very similar to in England or in Britain, when riders lose their claim, suddenly their business completely fall apart and their career is over. And it was a pretty nerve-wracking time for me, but actually, touch wood, since I've lost my claim, things have actually seemed to pick up a little bit. I think I'm riding at a 20% strike rate since I've lost my claim, and at the moment I'd be on track to to be looking at 80 to 100 winners this year if I carry it on. So that would be a fantastic target for me. I would like to. Last year I made 2 million in prize money, and I would like to better that this year. And also my biggest goal is to ride a stakes winner. I was second in a $250,000 stake earlier this year, and but it still eluded me, and so I've got a couple of nice rides and stake races this weekend. So that would be a short-term, well, hopefully short-term goal that I would like to tick off.
Just finally, I'll ask one final question. Would you encourage more younger jockeys who perhaps are not getting the opportunities to try and look abroad? Because you've mentioned the money you're earning, $2 million last year. That's something that only an apprentice could only dream of over here. They're not going to get anywhere near that amount of money. Would you sort of, with the way British racing is at the moment, I worry about it long term. I really do. Not just in terms of equine ability, but for so many young lads. We've mentioned yourself at Wolverhampton who are going for these outsiders who've really got no chance. They're not making ends meet. Would you encourage young jockeys like yourself to just, if things ain't going too well, of course, to take the plunge, because you could be pleasantly surprised?
Yeah, definitely. It's, there's no harm in trying it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, something that actually really was a huge factor in me staying here is that when I was riding in Britain, it wasn't doing my bank balance any good, but it also was really, really detrimental to my mental health, to be honest with you. You're working so hard for nothing. And over here it is, and I would really encourage anyone that is falling that way, because I am a huge advocate for maintaining proper mental health and well-being. And over here it is much easier on you mentally. You still have to work very hard. I mean, I probably have maybe 1 full day off a month.
Wow.
But the thing is that majority of the time I live 10 minutes from the track. This morning I'm not racing today, so I was at the track at 6 o'clock. I was out of there by 10, and for the rest of the day I can relax. We race 4 days a week, and you can actually have a life outside of racing. And for the opportunities you get, and the ability to like I say, maintain a clear headspace, I think 100% for any young jockey that is struggling or feeling that they don't know where to turn, just give it a go. Just come out here and just come out here for a couple of months and just see if you like it.
That's perfect, mate. Right, I'll just press the stop recording button there. So it stops, is it? Should have done. Is it?